Hey guys, my name is Dr. Pete Lingus. I'm a physical therapist here at Precision and Movements, and we deal a lot with athletic injuries. That ranges from, shoulder all the way down to ankle or even toe. And today I'm here with a good friend, Mike, and he's going to introduce himself right now.
Yeah, I'm Mike McKovich. I'm an Ironman certified coach and the owner of Max Performance Bike Fit. And one of the things that I see a lot, particularly with my triathletes, is the inability to maintain a strong aero position and to make themselves more injury proof with their run. So Peter and I have talked a lot about this, and he's got some great tips that we're going to pass on to you today to help with these things, to make you a more efficient and powerful athlete with some injury proofing as the icing on the cake.
Exactly. So the injury proofing is important, obviously. As athletes, you want to hit that PR, you want to do better. So it's not just about being injury proof, but it's also maximizing your performance. So today, the first topic we're going to talk about is hamstring tightness. And I know you guys out there have dealt with it. I've dealt with it myself. I used to try to sprint, and every time I would sprint, I would feel like a hamstring tightness or hamstring cramped. But long story short, I fixed it. And so today we'll give you guys some tips on how to hopefully manage the injury per se, but also maximize your performance. So yeah, Mike and I were talking, and a lot of it has to do with muscle imbalances. For myself, the first point that I would like to bring up is maybe as an athlete, you're actually too hamstring dominant. Maybe you're working out your hamstrings, maybe when you're squatting, whenever you're running. Let's say we put an EMG or a pad on the muscle, and we see how high the activation levels are. Maybe if we compared your hamstring activation to your glute activation might be way lower than the hamstring. So the tightness you might be experiencing might be more of an imbalance of muscle activation, possibly, right, Mike?
Exactly, and this isn't a new way of foam rolling. It's a way to develop your muscle firing patterns in a more efficient way to give you all those things that you're looking for: more power, efficiency, and those PRs. And like I say, it's not another way to foam roll.
Right,
so
exactly.
Peter,
yeah.
Take a look and see what we're talking about.
Absolutely, yeah. So a lot of first step as athletes, we think about, like Mike said, foam rolling, stretching. But as you've noticed, it can help for some cases, but the long-term chronic issues, it's probably related to more, like I said, that activation pattern. So that's number one. Maybe your glutes aren't quite as activated as your hamstrings. As an athlete, you want to have at least a 50-50 ratio of that, and that's something Mike or myself could help with as far as just cueing, and I deal with that every day. Number two, as we talked about, sometimes there's some studies that also talk about that maybe the quad strength versus hamstring ratio isn't quite 1-to-1, right, Mike? I think you mentioned that.
I see that a lot. When I have a little gym test that I have people do, especially in the off season where we're going to spend more time in the gym, and very, very seldom do I ever see a 1-to-1 ratio. It's more 60-40, if you're really bad, 70-30, which all leads to injury issues, the inability to really maintain a strong position, whether you're cycling or running.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Mike sees it firsthand. When you're on the bike, you're in a forward flex position, so your hamstrings are wound up. So you're actually already going to engage the hamstring in that cycle. But as you push through, sometimes your brain may not be trained enough or activated enough to propel equally quads, hamstrings, glutes, even calves, right, throughout the whole cycle. And as a runner, as runners, we see definitely if you're pushing through, terminal stance and behind you, sometimes we like to lift our leg up versus push through the ground. So when we lift, we're pulling and using our hamstring versus pushing hip extensors, which include the glutes and the hamstrings as well. So another tip for you guys would be, hey, maybe sometimes the quads may not be as strong as you need it to be. So we'll give you guys some tips on how to strengthen that as well at the end of this presentation. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like we've got a good full plate, so Where do you want to start, Pete?
Yeah, so let's start with maybe the glute activation.
Okay.
You can always type in glute activation on Google, and there's a lot of different exercises. But I do want to show off some exercises that can isolate the glutes, and then we'll jump into maybe some quad strengthening exercises to level out that ratio to 1-to-1. And then Mike's going to finish off with some tips on maybe some biking positions or some running positions that you would recommend. Maybe half of his athletes have a hard time feeling the glutes, and so do my athletes as well. And I think that's why things break down, because the glutes are not being utilized. So we want to give you guys a quick self-assessment of whether you are using your glutes or not. So there's two ways to check. Number one is you want to actually use your hands as a tactile feedback, where let's say you hold on for balance, but the glutes, what it does 3 different movements. It does hip extension, hip abduction, and hip external rotation. So you want to put your leg into that position, backwards, outwards, and a little bit of a twist, and use your hand to just feel if you feel tenseness in the muscle. So that's the first way. Number two is your brain should sense some kind of burn. So go and hold it there. Do you feel the tenseness, number one? Number two, do you feel the burn in the muscle? So maybe hold it there for a minute and see if you're able to feel anything at all. If you don't, you can put an ankle weight, or you can just put a band resistance like this around the foot, just to add a little more resistance. And same thing, you can kind of like kick it back, outward, and to the side. And for me, yep, I definitely feel the glute burning right here. So, all right. Any other tips you want to add, Mike?
Well, the big thing that I always have people do is I ask them to lift their leg, and I want them to fire this glute muscle and then move their leg. And many times people can move the leg, but they can't fire the muscle. So that's a pretty good indicator that you've lost the brain-muscle connection, and that's what we need to rebuild to help with your imbalance issues and your performance issues.
Exactly. Yeah, the brain-muscle connection is very important. It's the foundation to everything. Because if you're not connected to the muscle and you're trying to explode and powerfully move through the motion, you'll start to compensate and use other muscles, right?
Exactly.
All right, so after that self-assessment, you can give you guys your own self-assessment, spend a minute or two and just feeling, do you feel the glute muscles working? So let's say you don't. Let's say you have a really hard time feeling it. These are some tips. I would definitely go grab yourself a band, a resistance band. So the first one is just a 2-legged squat and hold. Very simple. You don't have to hold on, hopefully. So as you squat, keep your feet grounded and really start trying to push the knees apart. Like I said, the glute max muscles and the glute med, what its job it's supposed to do is to abduct and externally rotate. So I want you to squat and just really stretch the band out. You should start to feel the glute muscles burning. And again, hold it for a minute. Make sure you're able to feel some muscles, the back muscles right here, or I should say the glute muscles. So hold that right there, okay? Let's say you're a little bit more advanced and you don't feel anything. You can try to go to a 1-leg position. And this is where, as a runner or as a cyclist, you should be mastering this movement, because running is a series of single limb activities. If it's hard for you to balance on one leg, it's probably going to be hard for you to maintain good form running as well, right?
Exactly. A lot of times when I'm working with a new athlete, if I videotape them, you'll find that they're dropping one hip or the other, and usually it's exactly what Peter talked about. They have that inability to stabilize from right to left. So what he just showed you is a great exercise for developing that stability.
Yeah, so let's say finally, okay, your glutes are more activated, you're able to feel it, you're able to actually press on it, and you're feeling it. So that's a great way, again, tying in back to what we were talking about initially, was the hamstring tightness, right? So if you're still unable to feel your glutes, you're probably going to overuse your hamstring. But now that you're actually using the glutes now, you should already directly feel less pulling and tightness in the hamstring as your glute activation goes up. So that was the first point we were hoping to make, tip that we're going to make. Tip number 2 was, maybe your quad development is a little bit stronger than your hamstring development. So I want to give a tip as far as one of our favorite quad development exercises. It's right over here. So And it's pretty challenging. Mike and I were talking about how one leg balance, most athletes, even professional athletes, have a hard time. They'd probably be on the ground if they tried to do this. But I've tried to work on it myself. So, okay. So with any quad development, you actually do want to maintain quite a vertical trunk, which means your torso is tall, your core is locked in. You do want to add some glute activation, but it is mainly a quad development exercise. So the weight is here in the front. Okay, I want you to just try to stand up. Good. And then control the sitting motion back down. Good. So try this out at home. You can put your front foot down if you need to balance, and then squat. So, you know, about 4 sets of 10. Find a good weight that's medium to heavy resistance. Hopefully you don't have any pre-existing knee conditions prior to starting this, of course, but definitely developing your quads may also help reduce that hamstring tightness that you're feeling.
The other thing you can do on your bike is slow cadence, big gear intervals. So when I say that, I'm talking about a cadence of 45, no more than 55, where you're really trying to develop a quad dominant pedal stroke. So you're really pushing down and using that quad for your power.